I didn't think that I was ever going to play at Michigan State. The pressure of, playing against Michigan, beating your rival, playing against Ohio State for a chance to go to the Rose Bowl. I mean, those nerves were crazy.
All right, it's the Code of the Craftsman created by Ben Cowan, Jay Briggs Jr. Very excited to share with you the conversation that we had with the great Michigan State and NFL quarterback, Connor Cook, Rose Bowl champion and MVP, Big Ten champion and MVP, also a draft pick by the Oakland Raiders in 2016, where he would become the only quarterback in NFL history to make his first start in a playoff game. So, without further ado, the story of Connor Cook's playing career and the lessons he learned from playing in the spotlight and intense pressure, and also navigating a major life transition out of professional football and into the world of business. So I hope you enjoy. I want to ask you about the first 2 years to your career. You entered Michigan State as a redshirt freshman, and then by the time you get to your third year, you started to make an impact. But I want to ask you about the start to your Michigan State career. I want to just recount kind of what those years were like.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of taking it one step back, if you were to tell me when I was in high school that, I would go on and be a 3-year starter at Michigan State, that I would, be the all-time winningest quarterback in Michigan State history, that I would set records for total yards, that I would set records for touchdowns, I would think that you were crazy, because I didn't have the best high school career. My junior year, after I went, I threw for 9 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. I mean, that's a terrible season. But for whatever reason, Michigan State saw something in me that they liked, and they offered me a scholarship. To this day, it's still a mystery. I don't know how that happened. It wasn't like I was some, 5-star, 4-star, 3-star recruit. I was just a kid who had a scholarship to go to Michigan State. Then I get to Michigan State, and Kirk Cousins was a senior when I was a freshman. And just seeing the consistency that he had in practice and seeing him go out there and play on Saturdays, I didn't think that I was ever going to play at Michigan State. I was like, I got a scholarship, I'm on the football team. Obviously, I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can, and we'll see where it goes. I wasn't like one of these kids who, was a 5-star recruit and is like, I expect to play as a freshman. I expect to get in there and throw 40 touchdowns my freshman year, win the Heisman, and win a national championship. I was like, I'd be lucky to play 1 year. Seeing a guy like Kirk Cousins go through, I'm like, okay, if I want to play like him, there's a lot of things that need to be done.
It sounds like you've almost accepted that you might end up being a career backup at Michigan State. And if that's true, when did things start to change for you where you started to believe, okay, maybe I can make an impact here?
Yeah, so it was my second year. I didn't really get any playing time all season long, and we were pretty average. We went 6-6 and made a bowl game, and then the bowl game that we made was down in Arizona. It was the Buffalo Wild Wings bowl against TCU. But us as an offense, we couldn't score, and I wasn't out there playing. But I felt like, hey, if I was out there, I think I could, give this team a better shot of winning, than the current quarterback who was out there playing. And I met with Coach D'Antonio prior. So after the season ended and we made the bowl game, there's like a 3 to 4 week long period that you have before you play in the bowl game. So there was like a three week long period where we had bowl practices. And I went up to Coach D'Antonio and I was like, hey, I know I'm the backup, but all I'm asking for is just give me one opportunity to go out there in the bowl game and play. Give me just one drive and I'll prove it to you in the drive, that I deserve a shot to play, that I deserve a shot to be the guy. And I'm going to prove it to you with these bowl practices. So those 3 weeks of bowl practice, I was competing at the highest level that I could, giving it my all, working the hardest I've ever worked. So I knew that there was a job out there to be had. We were one quarterback away from being an elite team because we had such a good defense, and our defense was pretty young at the time. So Coach D gave me an opportunity. Coach D'Antonio, by the way, gave me an opportunity in the bowl game. He's like, all right, I respect you coming to meet with me in my office, requesting this opportunity. You know what? I'll give you an opportunity in the first half, and we'll see how it goes. So when I got the opportunity, prior to me stepping foot out there, we're going 3 and out like every drive. three and out, almost turned the ball over, almost throwing an interception, not moving the ball at all. And then when I got out there, we, moved the ball. We got a couple first downs. I, completed some passes. I was able to move the chains with my legs, and just having an opportunity like that where it's like, oh, this is actually college football. This is, me playing against, guys at the next level above high school, playing on TV, playing for a trophy, a bowl game trophy, and just making some plays like that. And that kind of just gave me the confidence knowing like, hey, you know what, if I am the guy, if I, get the keys to the car and I can go out there and play the whole game, I could think I can do this.
No doubt. And I think that kind of speaks volumes to your mentality as well, Connor, because I mean, being a backup can be a challenge, especially mentally. I know Ben and I were previous college golfers, and you kind of just have to grind out and qualify for each tournament. So it's kind of like your spot's just never really set in stone. But what would you attribute your mentality during those like kind of tough times, and then just being able to be the guy? Like, where did that come from?
I think it's just you're just born with it. Some people have the drive. Some people, get burnt out. Some people don't have it mentally. Some people are, more mentally strong than others. I think it was just from within and, being competitive my whole life from, elementary school to middle school to high school, always having that confidence in you, knowing that, if you are given an opportunity that you can make the most out of it. I think that's where it came from, and just knowing like, hey, I'm going to school, for free. I'm on scholarship. I'm on, I have this wonderful opportunity ahead of me. If I get in, I'm playing like major Division I college football. I'm doing something that I dreamed about. I'm doing something that I worked so hard to achieve that, if I'm just not playing, I'm not going to give up. If I'm just not the player for one season, if I'm not the quarterback for, oh, I redshirted. It's like you see these kids now, who I kind of touched on early on, where it's like they come in and they expect to play, as a true freshman. They expect to win the Heisman as a freshman. They expect to win a national championship. And when it doesn't happen and they don't play, oh, where can I transfer to? Where can I go? And then they transfer to somewhere else and then they don't play there. And then they transfer to another place and they don't play there. It's just like, who knows what could happen? Someone could get hurt. Boom, you're the starter. Like, just ride it out. Like, you're at a good program like Michigan State. I saw how great of a defense we had. I saw how great of a coaching staff we had. And if I didn't play my first year, if I didn't play my second year, I knew there were still 3 other seasons that I could potentially be the starter for, which eventually happened. And I was just patient. And I, was just like, hey, eventually it's going to happen. I'm going to get an opportunity. And when I get an opportunity, I'm going to make the most of it.
Yeah, so kind of you really stuck to it and almost had like an element of faith with that. But what I'm curious about is, so 1 year, your second year, you're a backup, and not long after, you're out there winning bowl games. What was that rise like? How did you handle that, all the success and the accolades that even you said you didn't think you would ever have?
Yeah, it's great. It's a great question. It's a great question. So, looking back, I never thought that I would be a 3-year player, 3-year starter, winning bowl games, setting records as a quarterback in Michigan State. But once you get like the first taste of it, so my first year starting was my redshirt sophomore year. And, you're so focused on the task at hand. Like, I'm not reading articles. I'm not, scrolling through the media and, I'm not, looking up stuff on Google. Like, what's the media saying about our team? Like, you have your blinders on. You don't even really talk to your family about certain things. It's just like one week, at a time, on to the next. What am I focused on this week? Winning. That's the number one thing. I'm going to go to class. I'm going to go to practice. I'm going to play on Saturday, and I'm going to win. And I'm going to go to the next one. I'm going to go focus on the next week. So, when all this was happening and I was playing, like, it was just kind of the most fun thing in the world, because you're playing at such a high level. You're playing against Big Ten teams like Ohio State, like Michigan, teams that you watched growing up in Big Ten country. You're playing on TV, things that I never did in high school. And like, when you do stop and think, you're like, holy cow, like, this is kind of crazy that I'm doing this stuff. But then when you're in the moment, like, as soon as you think about it like that, then it's like, then you'll slip up. where it's just like you have tunnel vision. You're going to practice, you're focusing on the install, you're watching tape, you're studying your plays, and you're just taking it 1 week at a time. And after the season is when you kind of like can stop and regroup and be like, whoa, like that was an insane ride, which is what kind of happened, winning the Rose Bowl. I mean, your first year as a starter, and you go out there and you win the Rose Bowl, something that hasn't been done at Michigan State for 26 years. So to answer your question, you kind of stop and look around and like, reflect, smell the roses, like after the job is done, after the season is complete. That's when you kind of like, talk with your friends, talk with your family. But then, as soon as that season's over, it's like, okay, let's go win another Big Ten title. On to the next.
Yeah, well, I do very well remember you playing against my Buckeyes in that championship game. Did not go well for the Buckeyes. I remember, and we hadn't lost all year too, so
yeah,
very well remember that. But so you were on top of the world there, 3 years, set every Michigan State quarterback record, and then you get drafted to the NFL in the 4th round to the Oakland Raiders. And now, after all the success you had, now you're back. Now you're almost back where you started, in a similar position at Michigan State, where you entered the season as the 3rd quarterback. So what was that like after, so you had all the success that you didn't know you would have at one point, and now you're kind of starting in a similar spot. What was that transition like for you?
Absolutely. So that's another great question. And, two totally different feelings because, when I went from high school to college, I was no way, shape, or form ready to play. As a true freshman, I wasn't ready to play as, start the season as a redshirt freshman. My 3rd year is when I was starting at Michigan State. And even that season, like I was like getting better, like, slowly getting better, like week by week. It wasn't really until like my 4th year, which was my 2nd year starting, where I was really just like cutting it loose, super confident in the offense. I could drop back and throw a ball with my eyes closed and know that I could hit this receiver here. So I was in really no rush to play coming from high school to college. I wanted to learn because I didn't really know anything. Remember, I didn't know coverages. I didn't know blitzes. Protections. It was like I needed time to really be confident to go out there. So then after you do play for 3 years and you feel like you have a great understanding of the game, and your competitiveness is heightened even more because you know what you're capable of doing and you've done it at a high level, in pressure situations like the Rose Bowl and playing in multiple Big Ten championship games. So you want to keep that going and you want to go right into, the next phase in your career playing. So when I was not playing, it was frustrating. And then when you're not, 2nd string, but you're 3rd string, that was really tough. It was tough. And, you're used to being the guy, you're used to, going out there and leading the guys, leading the team. There's only one quarterback that plays. So, any quarterback who comes from college and goes to the NFL, and if they're not the starter, if they're not, the backup, if they're 3rd string, no one's like, oh yeah, this is awesome. Like I'm totally loving life. Like, cause that's your career. If you're a 3rd string quarterback in the NFL, how long is your career going to be just being the 3rd string? You see guys now that, have made, 10-year long careers just being the number 3 quarterback, like, specifically probably from relationships, but, other 3rd string quarterbacks, like when you get labeled the 3rd string, it's like, okay, my career could be, 3 years. It could be 4 years. What am I going to do? I got to get an opportunity to play sooner than later. And, it was tough, but then again, it's what's best for the team. How can I help the starter? How can I help the backup? How can I help this offense? Any other guys at receiver, running back? Who can I help learn this offense with and help teach them along the way?
There was something you said that I wanted to go back to. You said that by the 2nd year you were starting at Michigan State, that I could close my eyes and complete a pass. To an outsider, that's one thing. There are a few things in sports I just do not understand, and that's one of them is how a quarterback can ever complete a pass. I've been going to Browns games for as long as I can remember. The amount of things that are going on, and you have all these 300-pound world-class athletes running after you, everyone going in different directions. I don't even know how you see. So can you say, what do you mean by, you said with my eyes closed? That was a pretty profound statement. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, that's another great question. So, What I think separated my career as well from, why I was so successful in college and not really so successful in the NFL was just the amount of reps. I mean, there's so many guys on a college football team, so a lot of people can get reps. When you go to the NFL, it's like that number is cut in half. So you're not getting as many reps. Really, the starting players are the only ones the starters are the only ones who get reps in the NFL. So that's obviously hindering towards other players who are not the starters. And when you're called upon, you just have to freaking play and basically play with these guys who you've never really had any chemistry or connections with. In college, you're getting, especially as a starter, rep after rep after rep after rep. I was in the same offense for 4.5 years. I was thrown to the same guys pretty much for 4.5 years. And when you've run a play, versus certain coverage over, 100 times, hundreds of times, like it just becomes second nature. You drop back, the footwork, exactly where your receiver is going to be on the field, where the defenders are going to be on the field. And you just have the chemistry, you have the faith, you have the confidence, like knowing like, okay, my guy's going to be right here. And yeah, the defender's there, but if I throw the ball just a little bit over this way, I know my receiver is going to run there. And it was just the difference was just the chemistry with the guys in the system, confidence in yourself as well. When you're in a system that you've only been in there for 1 year, with guys that you're not familiar with throwing to, I mean, that's the same thing as like me as a true freshman at Michigan State. If I were to be thrown out there and played, right away, probably wouldn't have done very well.
Mm-hmm. And as we were talking about earlier, with being the only quarterback in NFL history where their first start was in a playoff game, that you were put in a position where you had to do that. So I know there are a lot of things that happened that led to you being in the position where you were the starter of that quarterback, where you were the starting quarterback for the playoff game. Do you want to just recount the events that led to you being in that position and all the crazy probably week and a half that you had?
Yeah, the week and a half long career. Derek got hurt second last game against the Colts, I think. The next week was the last game of the season. McGloin started. He got hurt. I went in. I showed some glimpses of, some positive plays, obviously some negative plays in there too, but enough to give the coaching staff some confidence in me to ride with me going into the playoff game. And, the playoff game, it was, tough sledding, and, it just seemed like nothing really went right from the start. It's like anytime I had like an open receiver, I would miss them, or anytime my receiver was open, they would drop it, or we couldn't run the ball, or, I would drop back and it'd be like a second and long situation, and I would take a sack, and then it would be third and long, and we'd be out of field goal range, and then we'd have to punt. And it was like the perfect storm basically to just not perform well. And, obviously it's, big regret on my part. I mean, I did everything that I possibly could to be the best quarterback that I could be. I mean, I think it's such crazy, like besides obviously Johnny Manziel, who came out and said, I didn't watch film. You guys probably saw the Johnny Manziel thing on
Yes,
on Netflix, Untold or something, where it was 0.0 and he wasn't watching tape. Like every other quarterback in the NFL is watching tape. Every other quarterback is putting in the hours, putting in the time, to find that competitive advantage to be great. And, I prepared, how I've always prepared my whole career, and just wasn't the outcome that I wanted. Obviously, I mean, no one goes out there and wants to play bad, no matter what sport, you're in. And, you see games like that happen now where, quarterbacks, even super, successful quarterbacks that are future Hall of Fame quarterbacks, have a rough half, and it's like, oh, they only have 40 yards passing. What the heck? It happens in the NFL. And, mine just happened to be the first start that I had in a playoff game on the road. I was nervous going into the game as well. I mean, I was nervous for every game that I played in. I mean, you go back to Michigan State, I'm a 3-year starter, and I'm playing against Eastern Michigan, who we ended up beating 73-10, or I think that was my junior year. But I would get just as nervous playing against a team like Eastern Michigan as I would against Ohio State, as I would against Michigan or anyone. And because I always felt like any time that I felt comfortable, then I would go out there and play bad. Anytime I was too loose, I would play bad. So if I had the nerves, if I felt nervous, that was normal, because then I would go out there and I would, have a normal, consistent game that I was capable of. But yeah, it was crazy, obviously, because no quarterback's ever done it. So people were making a huge deal out of it. And, I just tried to put the blinders on and just treat it like any other game. But unfortunate the way that it had to go.
Connor, I heard you mention, you said it wasn't the outcome that you wanted, but you did put in a ton of preparation. But how do you come back from that? How are you able to still have a hunger for more and still be like, okay, I might not have had the game that I wanted. All the media's eyes were on me. It may be negative comments, whatever the case may be, but I know I'm still Connor Cook. But how did you, navigate that area or time in your life?
Yeah, it's another good question. You kind of just revert back to what got you to that point. I mean, there was times when I was in college where you have a really bad practice and you go out and you bounce back the next practice when you're competing for a job. You have a bad game, you come back the next week and have a really, really good game. And when I was a professional, you have a bad game like that and you bounce back. And, unfortunately, I never got another shot in a game after that. That was the last time I played in a game, and was just really competing to make the teams after that. So you really just stick to what got you there. You're a confident player. You're gritty. You always got to be persistent, especially as a quarterback. I mean, it's a journey. It's a mountain. There's ups, there's downs. I mean, no one, not just quarterback. I mean, it's for any position in any sport. Like, you're never just winning, and never losing. Like, you're always going to experience adversity. So it was just me kind of just reassuring myself, looking back on the positives of my career and saying, look what I was able to do here. And, my first time playing in the NFL was against, the defending Super Bowl champs with the Denver Broncos, against a guy like Von Miller, and Aqib Talib is out there, and had some other really good players on the defense. And I was able to throw a touchdown in like 2 quarters. So you just kind of tell yourself stuff like that, and any like positive reinforcements. Cause I've always been a positive reinforcement kind of guy, like, manifesting, speaking to yourself, telling yourself certain things to where things just, appear to happen out of nowhere.
No doubt. And in your current life, do you feel like you still experience those same types of nerves that you had in the NFL?
No way. Does not even compare. Those nerves are long gone. I mean, when you're, obviously you want to do well, you're touching the ball every single play. So pressure's on you to go out there and win the game. And it's a physical game. You don't want to get hurt. That's always in the back of your mind. Not really in the back of your mind, but it is a brutal game. So there's a possible chance of having a serious injury, which obviously gets the nerves going. And, it's just your job's on the line. You want to go out there and you want to lead your team to victory. If you have a bad game, then people are going to start blaming you, and people are going to start saying you need to be benched or this and that. So, playing at a high level like that in front of all those fans in the arena, people watching on TV, the pressure of, playing against Michigan, beating your rival, playing against Ohio State, in the Big Ten championship, for a chance to go to the Rose Bowl. I mean, those nerves were crazy, insane. But once the game, kicked off and got going, those nerves kind of go away. But yeah, what I'm doing now in real estate and just, calling people, talking on the phone, having meetings, there's no nerves like that at all.
And those types of nerves, those types of events, those are not things that happen in normal life. A bit ago, JJ Watt had a quote. He said the amount of money that I would have to have on the line gambling to replace the feeling of getting a sack in a game just doesn't exist. So knowing that that's not necessarily something that you can get in normal life, and I mean, you might get used to the like that adrenaline, the competition. Is that something that you learn to live without, or is that something that you have to replace as you transition out of professional football?
I'm not like looking for that kind of stress. I mean, because I feel like I was probably more uptight and more nervous than like the average player. I mean, I would puke before every game, so I thought that was kind of weird. But then I saw that Josh Allen also pukes before every game, so like, maybe he has the same nerves that I did. But I always see these quarterbacks that look so loose and they're laughing and this and that. I mean, I was just straight focused. Like I couldn't laugh or have a good time until the game was over and I knew that we won. Then it was like, okay, time to take a deep breath, time to move on. Like I was just so locked in and loaded. Cause like I said, like as soon as I felt comfortable or as soon as I like, you know, laughed or did this, and I'm like, okay, then like I'm going to have a bad play or I'm going to, make some bonehead move to have us lose the game. So those nerves, it was fun, while it lasted. But I mean, it's not like I'm out there like, oh, I need to go skydiving to get the same adrenaline that I had, playing football. And, I enjoy life. I'm married. I have two daughters, another girl on the way. I mean, the amount of time and like the amount of fun and everything that I'm doing with my own family that I've been able to create is, totally filling the, adrenaline rush that I had playing sports. Looking back, it was awesome. Loved my time at Michigan State, loved my time in the NFL, but it's not like I, could never give it up and I have to go do something to replace it, but that's a great question. I didn't hear the thing about JJ Watt saying that. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, I think it was on one of those Hard Knocks, or maybe it was just mic'd up. Yeah, and congrats on having a third one on the way. That's pretty cool.
Congrats.
Yeah, super cool to hear. And no, it's really cool. As the both of you know, I'm a psychology master's student right now, and something that I'm picking up on is that us psychologists love to study experts, and only 2% of high school students make it. Of high school football players play Division I football, and about 1.5% of those Division I players get a chance to play professionally. So even how difficult it is to do that, and knowing that you did that and all the things that you overcame, could you walk us through the decision to pursue other opportunities after and transition from out of pro football?
Right. So after the NFL, I got released by the Lions in like 2019, like right before training camp. It was like the worst time to get released because at that point, pretty much every team has the roster set, especially quarterback wise. Like no quarterback is getting signed right before training camp and he's going to go in and learn that system. Usually the quarterbacks are there for the spring, to give them the whole, OTA, window, mini camp window to really learn that offense. So then you're going into training camp already knowing that offense. So at that point, I'm like, no team is going to, sign me. I couldn't fall back on really any relationships that I made throughout my short career in the NFL because a lot of the coaches were out of the NFL and not coaching. So I didn't end up getting signed, which is probably, what I envisioned. So I wasn't on a team. And the XFL, comes out and like, oh, we're going to have an XFL season and, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. And I was like, hey, why don't I go, turn it loose, cut it loose, play in the XFL and, restart my career and, do well there. Maybe I can get a shot back in the NFL. So I was picked like first overall or second overall or something in the XFL draft by the Houston Roughnecks and never got a chance to play there because PJ Walker was a quarterback and he was assigned to the team. So we played 5 games. It was a 10 game season, and 5 weeks in, we were undefeated. We had a great team, loved everyone on that team, loved all the coaches. We were the best team in the XFL and looked like we were going to go on to potentially win the XFL championship. And boom, COVID hits. So then at that point, me and my wife, we just got married. We didn't have a house because we didn't know where my career was going to take me. So it's kind of just like living in like city to city to city, and then once we kind of knew what like the end game was going to be, end result, then we would maybe, settle down, buy a house. But at this point, it was just kind of like, let's ride this football wave as long as possible. And let's see where I can go and how long I can make it. So COVID hit, we go back home. We're like living at my mom and dad's like basement. we're married. Then we find out she's pregnant. And, I was going to go play up in Canada with the Toronto Argos because they had my rights. And there's like a certain thing that works out with the CFL. I don't really know how it works, but they have certain players' rights. And instead of it like having a draft, you were like assigned to go play with them. Kind of like how with the XFL, like certain quarterbacks were assigned to each team in that manner. So I was going to go play up in Canada. And luckily, Toronto was like 4 hours away from Cleveland, so it wasn't that far. I was having meetings with the coaches via Zoom, learning the playbook, learning the offense, and then they come out and say that they're not having a season. So at that point, I'm like, okay, no one knows how long this COVID thing's going to last. I'm not going to go play up in Canada because they just said they're not going to have a season. And I'm probably not going to get a call from an NFL team. My wife is pregnant. We don't have a house. I had enough money saved up to where we could go buy a house and start our life, post football. And I was just at a point in my career too, where it was like, okay, I was fighting, trying to make a team in the NFL. Then I go to the XFL and I don't play. Then I was going to go play in the CFL and then they don't have a season. Like I was just like pretty drained from the whole just uncertainty, moving around here, there, I wanted certainty and I wanted like a foundation of like where I know that I will be, for a certain amount of time. Not like, okay, well, I'm just signed with this team and who knows how long. I could be here a week, I could be here 2 days, I could be here for the rest of the season. So I was just at a point in my career where I'm like, okay, let's just go get a house. Let's lay our roots down here in Cleveland where we grew up, where we have family, where we have friends, a place that we call home, that we've called home for so long, a place that we love, and get into something that isn't football. And I was totally cool with it. It was the perfect time. And life honestly could not be better now with work, with family, and just life in general.
Connor, what was that like your first day in the office? Did you have like any imposter syndrome or were you kind of just fine with it?
I like took my phone and like chucked it across the room and like nailed someone in the face, dropping back, being a quarterback. Not really, because so before I joined Marcus and Millichap, I was with another commercial real estate group and it was still kind of in COVID. So I was working from home and I was just making calls all day and like setting up meetings. So I was not really in an office. The really first time that I was in an office culture was here at Marcus and Millichap, which was like a year, maybe like a year and a half ago. But no, it's kind of like a locker room, just in the bullpen over here. And I'm actually at work right now. They just got a bunch of cubicles set up. People are just ripping calls left and right, feeding off each other. Just who can make the most calls a day. I'm gonna try and get 100, and how many deals can we close, like that kind of thing. So the office has a little sense of like a locker room. Not so much locker room talk. Obviously, we all know how locker room talk can probably go, but no, there's some similarities for sure.
And Connor, something that we always like to ask our guests towards the end of the conversations, what's your definition for being a craftsman? And if you have any final advice on becoming one, what would that be?
So my mom always told me growing up, like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And it was just practice. I mean, it's the work you put in when no one's watching, looking back at like a football season, a basketball season, whatever it is, where you're competing, in a game, golf, people look at the golf season, people look at the football season, people look at the basketball season. That's like 10% of what you're actually doing. Your body of work, it's like 90% process. People see the season, people see the golf matches, people see the games. That's 10%. The result is 10%. So it is the practicing, it is the repetitions, it is, doing something over and over and over and over and over again until you become an expert at it. And one of the coaches I had during my professional career, John Gruden, said that he was at a golf course. This is like before Tiger Woods was ever Tiger Woods. He was at a golf course somewhere in Florida and he saw this young guy out there, like it's getting dark and it started to pour rain. And this kid was out there just hitting like ball after ball after ball. And it's like getting like pitch dark and it's pouring rain and raining even harder and harder and harder. And it was Tiger Woods out there at a golf course, putting in the time, putting in the effort. And it's just like that. That's how you become a craftsman. And any advice I would give, kind of like what I just said, you just work at something, you practice it early in the morning, late at night, visualize it in your mind, talk to yourself about it, manifest it, speak it into existence. I mean, that was another thing too. I don't think I've ever told anyone this. maybe just a couple of my friends in Michigan State, but like I would like talk to myself every single week. I would literally say, I will lead the Spartans to victory versus Wolverines. I will lead the Spartans to victory versus whoever we're playing that week. I would just like literally just over and over and over again, just say that. And, looking at my career, 3 seasons at home, lost 1 game and lost, 4 other games over the span of 3 years. So just anything that you can do to just get it in your mind and so you can't get it out of your mind, really.
This was a pleasure. So thank you again for taking your time out of your schedule. Really cool for us to have this conversation with you. Jay, you want to close us out?
Yeah, I'll let Connor close us out.
Go to the Craftsman. Out.
Thank you for listening. We hope you are able to reflect and apply the wisdom that resonates. Be sure to follow us on all social media platforms at Code of the Craftsman. Stay tuned for more content, special guests, and gems you can only get on Code of the Craftsman.